Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Welcome. Friday morning. I've done so many sessions in the evenings this week that it feels like we're almost going like daily at this point in time, but not complaining. The voice is not keeping up, but let's see how it goes this morning. Thank you very much for being with us on this lovely Friday morning. Really excited to share the latest news with you, and I suspect that David is going to add his voice to the budget speech this morning. I'm not sure. We'll have to wait and see what he does. But excited to have David back from the FBI, and thanks to them for presenting the news. Then we've got Norma, who's going to talk about priorities this morning, and which is a very important thing, particularly in my life at this point in time. So really looking forward to what she's got to share. Then I have Tanya back this morning, Tanya Kunze. Really excited to talk to her about failing forward, which is really an amazing topic. She made a little 2-minute video the other day on LinkedIn, and I wasn't even finished watching, and I said to her, Tanya, can we talk more about this on the show, please? And she said yes, graciously. So thank you very much, Tanya. And then today we're going to have a bit of a fun segment after that, where I'm going to share a little bit about the behind the scenes, about what's going on in here, how I get this look and feel. Just 5 minutes, a little bit, lifting the kimono and showing you what's going on in here. And then we're going to do a wrap up, and that's going to be the show this morning. So yeah, good morning, Tanya. Welcome back.
So awesome to be back. Oh, amazing. I'm going to show you guys something first. Have you seen my Ragnarok?
No, please show it off. Oh,
we've got
check that.
Ragnarok. I don't know if you can see them both. I thought I'd bring you superheroes.
No, they are all good. They are very welcome. Yeah. So, and that's your dad's did those paintings.
Yes. So my dad's a professional artist and painted Ragnar because he's our TV hero. And then the rock was painted for a restaurant that decided they didn't want to put the painting up anymore. So then I took that and I walked up the stairs one day and I realized, oh, it's Ragnarok.
Absolutely brilliant. I really like that. What I want to ask you, sorry, in terms of that, maybe the restaurant, I don't know, did they never take it, or was it there and they closed down, or how did it end up back with you?
A bit of a contentious issue because they ordered it without a deposit and then they let him down, which I thought was awful, but I'm just going to let that one fly.
Yeah, in this instance, it's okay. Or maybe they realized the Hard Rock Cafe was already taken. I don't know. So yeah, no, cool stuff. Tanya, welcome back. I'm really looking forward to this discussion with you around this question of failing forward, and sort of let's just set the scene. I mean, where did this thought first originate from? Because I love these little 1.5, 2-minute videos that you make while you're in the car, and I think you call it Thought on the Go or something like that.
Yes.
I don't know what that is called, but you do it quite often in your car, and every week I think at least I see a new video. But what prompted this thought, and where does it come from, so we can set the scene and then go deeper into that?
Absolutely. Well, as we all know, I'm quite a nerd, so I always think of these strange things, and my brain always goes when I'm driving, and I just come up with ideas and thoughts. And the one thought that I had is, how we celebrate people passing, or just passing, and we look at that, and I'm thinking, well, okay, that's one aspect. Then I did a bit of research on it, and I saw that on average, 6.2% of all scholars in any particular year get an A average. And I thought, well, who's failing? Is it the students failing, or is it the school system failing? And of course, I do 5-day workshops with people who are ADD and ADHD on a quite a frequent basis. And I keep them focused and concentrating because I use the audio, visual, and kinesthetic representational system processes I take the time to find out who each individual is from a dominance, influence, system structure, and compliance perspective with Phil Hagen, my partner in the UK. And when I work with my people, I understand the individuality of them and I work with them. So I realized that people aren't failing. The schooling system potentially is failing. Now, I know a lot of schools have moved into using, like Crawford's brilliant at it, they're using the representational systems, and the material coming out of there is fantastic, but so are the aggregates. And then I took it into the workspace and I thought, well, if we're training in the workspace and we're training same old, then we've got a problem. And as we know, there's 48 different types of salespeople and 48 different types of leaders. Are we still doing a broad stroke? So my whole concept sort of with failing forward literally initiated from that. And then I started realizing, well, are we failing or are we learning? And that's where that whole concept came from.
Yeah, and I think it struck a chord with quite a few people. You know, it wasn't just that, you know, you were talking to yourself in the car and then this thing went nowhere. I think you must have had quite a good response from this thought, because I think a lot of people are saying, because I find it in my own life, is we are so, and I found it like with my hobby, with painting. Like I would sometimes, well, often not paint because I'm afraid that I'm going to stuff it up and I have to do it over again. So I don't know if it's the fear of failure or this thing about like, I don't want to do it again and again and again. I don't know which of those two are really the biggest culprit. But that's somewhere where I really realized, like, champ, you just need to paint. And if it's a stuff up, then you strip it and you start again, because that's how you're going to get better. But it is still, it's still something, I don't know. Do you think we feel a little bit like, you know, when I do something, it's particularly like something that's going to be quick and easy. Okay, I'm going to walk around the block and, you know, if I don't make it, it's okay. It's 10 minutes, I'm back at home. But if you're going to spend like weeks on something and it doesn't work out, do you think that we are thinking in our mind that wasted time, lost opportunity, you know? Do you think that the amount of effort and time that we need to put into something, does that also play a role in terms of whether we afraid to take action or not?
Well, it's 100% programming. I'm so glad you raised that. Okay, so we were programmed from birth that failing was bad, that we had to be perfect. Don't color outside the lines. Make sure that you've written your words properly. When you read, it has to be perfect. Don't make a mistake. So we were programmed almost to be a little bit artificial intelligence, a little bit AI, a little bit robotic. Don't make a mistake, because it's bad. But look at the grand masters, look at a Picasso, look at a Monet. Those aren't perfect. Those are not perfect flowers. They're not perfect stars. They're an interpretation, they're an impression. So what is perfection really? And we need to understand that sometimes, you know, someone can make a mistake, but it becomes something incredibly beautiful. Also, it's rewiring in our brains. So if we look at cognitive neuroscience, for example, and we look at neuroimaging research, things like self-regulation failure, which transcend overwhelming temptations, those are areas where we grow. So are we going to be living in the sort of success from the top down? Because if we're living in fear, we're living bottom up, okay? So we're looking at the prefrontal cortex versus the subcortical regions. Now, if we're living in the subcortical regions, we're living in a fear-based response, which is deeply ingrained in us from school days. It's, you know, don't step outside the line, don't speak, don't get caught chewing gum, all those things that we all did. And now we're sitting and going, well, you know, now we've got to look at top-down regulation. Top-down regulation, when you're using the neocortex, when you're using the more conscious parts of the brain, it's going, I'm going to explore, I'm going to try this. If I fail, I fail. On the go was one of those. I thought of myself in the moment. I thought, I'm going to film myself with my brain wave, and I call it brain farting, okay, in the morning. So I get this idea and it pops into my head, and then I sit down and I do this video. And I have had such an incredible response. Sometimes I've had up to 48,000 views of the video where I've just had this idea in the morning, which potentially is intended to help someone or guide someone or grow someone or change a thought process. And I thought to myself in that moment, some people are going to laugh at me, some people are going to judge me, but some people are going to get something from it. So I did it anyway. And, you know, so my self-regulation then went into, if I get judged, I get judged. Everybody judges. Let's get over and build a bridge. So you're very, very normal in your response, but paint. And in Maxwell's book, apparently he speaks a lot about, you know, there's a trial group where they say there was a group that were given a mandate to create something, but they were judged on the final product, and another group that were judged on how many times they created it. And the results were that the people that didn't have a worry about it being perfect the first time, but created many, learned from their former mistakes and were able to create something amazing at the end, and they actually ended up getting the high marks.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I think, you know, a lot of people are feeling like school is set up obviously still for the industrial system or the industrial times, and sort of the way that you need to be employed and do things this way, and you need to do it right. So we've got this negative way of approaching it. And I think a lot of us, because we wonder when did we lose our creativity? When did we lose our curiosity? And I think by the time you get to matric, maybe, I don't know, you know, that's when some of these things get lost a little bit. And I'm just like now also having these brain farts as we're speaking. And I think maybe there's good intentions, you know, there may very well be good intentions, but they're not. At the end of the day, that's not how it fosters in our lives, because we tend to get labeled, we tend to get put into boxes, or we tend to associate with certain people that are sort of labeled the same, and we drift away from our potential and our gifts and things. And it's only sometimes late in life that we figure out that, listen, school was just school, you know. But for some people, they get stuck there, and that's quite a challenge. You talk a lot about the I'm not good enough syndrome. So what is that?
It's based heavily on what you've just spoken about now, is where I coach a lot of people, and it often comes up where they don't feel good enough. They don't feel like they could do it. They don't go to the next level. They don't go to the next step. And I've coached so many people to get over their own blocks, but you put your own block in your way. So, you know, the rhetoric in coaching would be what has worked before, what hasn't worked before. What lesson did you learn from what hasn't worked before? So let's just go back to that school rhetoric again and bring it back into this conversation. A child comes home and goes, geez, Mom, I failed. Or geez, Dad, I failed. And the parent goes, geez, try harder next time. Or, you know, learn harder next time, or take more time. And they try and sort of appease the situation, rather than sitting off the child and going, so what lesson did you learn from this? Okay, so you may have failed this particular test or this exam or this year, or whatever it might be. Hopefully it's not that late in the program. What did you learn? So did you learn that maybe you needed to study for shorter periods of time? Because we only focus and concentrate for 14 minutes at a time. There again, another old learning that I can dispel, because it's just nonsense. We don't focus for 45 minutes at a time. Our brains are far too active at the moment. So we've only got a window of 14 minutes. So you should study for 14 minutes, take a break, study for 14 minutes, take a break, and you'll get more in. Then what is your representational system, my child? You know, are you left or right brain oriented? Are you audio, visual, or kinesthetic? Should you be reading your text onto your phone and listening to it, and maybe drawing mind maps? What is your learning representational system? How are you going to take this information in? Because we were never taught how to study based on our ability throughout life. So people that are in the financial services industry that are learning those REs, I tried to do my REs, and my RE was on the day before my neuroscience exam. And when I walked out, they looked at me and they're like, no, choose another career path, because I didn't study properly and it just wasn't there for me. It's a lot of work. Huge respect to all people who are really far down that road. So, you know, it's how are you learning? And then you sit with your child, and with my young son, he's audio kinesthetic. And I've been to the school and I've said to them, look, guys, I want you to have someone that does an audio exam with him where he's responding. The quiet written exam is not going to work for him. If he can't hear himself, he's not going to assimilate the information appropriately. And we went down a whole rabbit hole with that one. But, you know, it's understanding that we are different. We have greater knowledge. You know, people thought the earth was flat. They knew, no, it's round. And how many of those myths still exist today because we haven't questioned them?
Yeah, that's a very good question. And, you know, coming down to beliefs, I was talking in a session the other day about the impact of beliefs on our thoughts and our emotions, and just that downstream effect that has got. And if we don't challenge what we believe to be true about something, then we just, because maybe something happened to us, maybe we saw something, maybe somebody close to us had an experience, and now we take that as to be the truth, the absolute truth, and we don't even go there to challenge what we know. And that's the thing. So on that point, for some people, fear is very motivating. For others, it's very debilitating. But what is the difference between? I mean, is it even possible to take fear and let it motivate you? And then maybe also, I've also heard you talk about courage quite a bit. So what is the difference then between fear and courage? And can we talk a little bit about around those two aspects?
I'm loving your questioning. This is so on point. So people often say to me when I raise this in my workshops, and they say, no, but fear motivates me. And I usually just stop them dead in their tracks and I go, no. And then they look at me quite disheveled because I've jumped in on their thinking process. Fear debilitates. Fear, it's proven. If you look on any neuroimaging research, when you go into a place of fear, it sends out cortisol, it sends out inattentional blindness. It doesn't send it out, it creates inattentional blindness. It creates the fight, flight, or freeze center and a shutdown. Okay, so fear makes you go into a back foot. But if you shift that fear into courage and you go, I am good enough, I'm going to try, I'm going to attempt this, immediately you shift up to the courage part of the brain. Now, everything vibrates, we know this. A table vibrates at a certain frequency and water vibrates at a certain frequency, and so do our physical bodies. But we have three core bodies: the mental body, the physical body, and the energetic body. And our emotion also has a frequency which they can measure, megahertz. Now, fear has a 95 megahertz vibrational measurement, and courage is sitting more at the 150 to 200 mark. So it's actually a different vibrational energy. Now, when you have a different vibrational energy, it sends the thought to a different part of the brain. So when your body is feeling an emotion of fear, which is your 95%, which most of the world actually functions from, it goes into the fight, flight, or freeze, and it creates debilitating knee-jerk reactions, which are kind of thoughtless and programmed. When you're thinking in the higher vibrational thing, because the energy behind it is higher, you go into a more conscious part of the brain, where you're able to have attentional awareness, think clearly, bit of calm, you're breathing. So, when you're having shallow breaths, you have a shallow life. When you have deep breaths, you have a deep life. And it's all about how your body and physiology are reacting to those dynamics. So fear wasn't the motivator, courage was. And so, for example, if you're in a sort of sales space and you're given a target and you're a competitive A-type, it wasn't fear that made you beat your colleague. It was actually courage, because you're going, you know what, I'm courageous enough to take you on, and I'm courageous enough to win. So climb into that courage. If you can't be a mountain, be a hill, but be something more. Take that step forward. If you see that you failed at something, look at it and go, okay, perceived failure, conceived failure. What did I do wrong? What could I do differently? How can I shift and change? Let me try again tomorrow. And that changes everything.
Yeah. And I mean, just think about when we learned to walk. Just imagine the first time you fell down, you decided, no, walking is not for me. I'm not talented enough. I just can't do this thing. Imagine that. Or when you started driving a car, it's like, the first time it's like, I can't. Even if it's just a little bit of an uphill, you just can't get in, and then you stop. It's like, okay, so now what? So luckily we had Uber. I don't know if we still have that now with everything that's going on, but that's the thing, and it's like that with everything in life. Everything we know today, we struggled with when we started. And it's quite an interesting sort of aspect this to say, well, fear can't motivate you. It's actually courage that is the motivation. And that just means obviously also just facing things head on and just going for it and just taking action. For me, I don't know. Are there different ways that one can deal with fear? Because for me, it's taking action. That's the only thing that I've found that is working for me. Like if I start to feel anxious, or I start to feel stressed, or I start to feel like, oh crap, I don't know what I need to do next. If I don't take action, it becomes worse and worse and worse. But if I do something, then that feeling sort of starts to subside. So are there other ways that one could actually face fear head on?
Absolutely. Well, that's another brilliant question. So what we've got to realize is that fear stems from where in the brain we're thinking. Now, when we have a little bit of a bit knowledge, and I know I always talk about the 2 areas, but I'm trying to sort of keep it simple because there's a tremendous amount of information. There's obviously more than 2 areas of the brain, but I keep it to the basics so people don't have a biology lesson from me. But when you realize that if you're thinking in your fear part of your brain, your breath is shallow, you're not feeling great, all your bodies are in a state of fight, flight, or freeze, it's going to be debilitating for you. So your activity to start taking action actually burns some of that fight, flight, or freeze that you're busy creating. That energy gets put somewhere and it enables you to move into a more conscious part of the brain. But start listening to your body. We've never, especially, we were trained not to listen to our emotions. We were trained not to listen to our body and be cerebral. But they're all interconnected. So, if you're having a moment of panic and you maybe, your palms start sweating or your heart rate goes up or your breath is shallow, sit, take a moment, put your hand on your solar plexus and breathe. Just some deep breaths to calm the system down. There's a tapping exercise which the Navy SEALs use where you put your finger on this part of your forehead and you close one nostril and you take a deep breath in, hold it for several seconds, slowly breathe out, change nostrils, breathe in, breathe out, calm the system down, and then reapproach the situation. It takes a few seconds, literally under a minute. You can calm your system down, stop the production of all those hormones, and if Navy SEALs can use it, so can people that are in the financial services space. So it's cool, and we've been happening to do it.
Because we are financial SEALs, yeah.
There we go, financial SEALs. That's a new term. We're going to use it. Then things like there's a fantastic app, which is it's got meditations which are completely neutral. They've got no music. They're non-religious. They literally just created to calm the brain down, to get you into your consciousness. So you download that app, you put the headphones in, you listen for 5 to 7 minutes, maybe 12 minutes at most, calm your system down, then reapproach it. But when you're in a state of fight, flight, or freeze, it's going to be knee-jerk reactions based on your past. And I've got to put one more thing in there. If we look at timelines, if we took a typical straw that you drink a cool drink with, and we put our timelines on that straw, okay, so that's birth and all the different moments in your life that you remember. We're living in this sort of going back to the future type scenario, okay? So you're constantly revisiting your past to base your reactions on it, which is a very normal process that we use for survival, right? But if I take that straw and I face it towards you, you've got to look at that straw head on. There's only one timeline, there's only one moment, and that's now. So when you go into that place of calm through meditation, through the breathing technique that the financial SEALs are going to start using, and through all of those dynamics, what happens is you suddenly realize, this is my moment. All the things that I was afraid of in the past, maybe I've transcended them. Maybe I've grown beyond them, and maybe I don't need to revisit that anymore. And you have a conscious now moment look at what's going on in your life. You there? Francois,
Yeah,
I've lost you.
there, sorry.
Yes, I can.
Yeah, sorry, I don't know what happened there with the internet a little bit. Okay. But those are all very, very insightful, Tanya, and it's making me think like, does it mean that because obviously I have a choice whether I want to accept failure or if I want to say screw failure, this is what I'm going to do. But does it mean that if I do choose to accept failure, which is sometimes necessary. I mean, if something isn't working and you've really given it a good shot, then at some point you need to decide like, okay, maybe we need to change a bit of direction. It also doesn't help running into a wall all the time, but you can't make a door because you're too small to do that. But does it mean that I'm accepting mediocrity if I accept failure? Is that absolutely a bad thing?
Well, you're on fire today, Francois. Loving these questions. They're so great. So what I am definitely not advocating is mediocrity. And I'm not advocating doing the same thing over and over again to get the same result. Obviously, my hero Einstein says that, right? So, what it is, it's saying, okay, I've made a mistake. I'm not going to do the same thing again because I'm going to stop. I'm going to turn the straw this way. I'm going to calm my breath and I'm going to look at what didn't work, why it didn't work. I'm going to self-question. And look, that's obviously a reason why coaching is so powerful. You know, the amount of times I'm sitting with clients and it's 1 hour, like once a month or whatever, and we regroup and we look at where they've failed, we look at where they've gone wrong, we look at what hasn't worked, and we then question it together. Because, you know, questioning in your own mind, you're going to get a lot of the same answer. And that's why coaching in sport and coaching in a corporate space really works incredibly well, because often self-reflection isn't enough. So obviously try the self-reflection, but if that doesn't work, it's really powerful to go to somebody that can assist you because they've got the training and qualification to assist you. And coaching is designed to be future looking. So we don't necessarily always look to the past. We sometimes have to, but it's more about future, saying, okay, where are you now? Where do you want to be? How are we going to get you there? Then we look at those areas of fall off where you may need to reflect marginally to the past, and where in your past did that impact you? Was it a teacher? Was it a parent? Was it something that happened to you at work? Was it a moment where you felt embarrassed? And then we can say, well, do you still need to worry about that? You know, are you still 11? Can we be an adult now? Let's move on. And so it's easy to then reflect on those aspects and go, you know, yes, I can change my rhetoric. Yes, I can change the way I think about this, the way I approach this, the way I'm looking at it. And, you know, the same old, same old. Sometimes people work exclusively from a textbook, and they'll try a textbook modality, but that textbook modality worked in that particular environment with those people. Is it going to work in your environment with your people? You know, that 80-20 thing, like, you know, go and do this. And is it 80-20? Looking at close ratios, for example. Some people have got a 10% close ratio. Some people have got a 90% close ratio. They cannot work the same way. I had a lady the one day, I was called in to assist, and she was a cold caller, and she was making 100 cold calls a day and getting no appointments. So all I did is go in and go, I don't want you to make 100 calls. I just want you to give me 4 appointments today. Taught her how to do it briefly, and we got 4 appointments. It was quite a simple thing. So it's changing the way you think about it, changing your approach, changing your view, and be careful of the textbook. The textbook it can be quite dangerous, because then you're repeating things. And as we've proven, you know, not 21 days to make a habit, 66 days to make a habit. You know, all of these dynamics that we've held on to, how true are they? So, you know, question, and get what works for you.
Oh, that is critically important. And I love the fact that, you know, just change something small, you know, and just try that, because sometimes it's always this thing about like a compass, you know, or if you start off in a certain direction, if you're off by 1 degree, it's nothing. You know, if the pilot takes off from Cape Town and they off by 1 degree, by the time they get to the first mountain, it's still okay. But by the time they get to Joburg, they might not be getting to Joburg. They're way off. And that little change in the beginning has a massive impact over the long run. We've also been chatting about a quote from Martin Luther King Jr., I think that you are quite passionate about. And don't you want to sort of end the segment for us with some thoughts on that, Tanya?
Absolutely. So, and you brought up flying, and actually, yes, we can fly. I've flown to Durban and Cape Town twice with Airlink, and I love it, and I can get on the plane and it's freedom. But he says, if you can't fly, run. If you can't run, walk. If you can't walk, crawl. No matter what, keep moving.
Absolutely. And if you can't crawl, roll. That's also a thing. so Francois added that part. That was awesome. Amazing. Tanya, thank you so much for your time this morning. It's been very insightful. I love it. Your energy is absolutely infectious. So thank you very much. I wish you all the best. Have a fantastic weekend, and we'll see you soon again. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. I love it.